What's the weirdest thing your ex ever did after the breakup? He made a wax casting of his dong that he planned to give me as a candle. Then he sent me a collection of his fantasies, all about using the said wax dong casting. He also tried to trick me into believing he had slept with someone by leaving behind a series of fake clues throughout the house we shared. He put a pair of wine glasses and dishes from our wedding china beside the kitchen sink with an empty bottle of wine, left some towels with massage oil either in the bathroom or by the bed, I forgot which, and rumpled up the sheets. The weirdest thing, though, was that he somehow oiled up the back half of his body and then lay on the sheets so it looked like someone covered in massage oil had been lying on my side of the bed. The jerk ruined a nice set of sheets doing that. So, yeah, that was a bit odd. Story 2, I got something shipped to me in a bubble mailer with "fragile" written all over it, just like his ego. Inside was a letter he wrote, 10 pages, single-sided parchment, calligraphy, written with a dip ink pen because you could literally see where he had to refresh the ink. Glittery green ink. He put more effort into this letter than he did during the last year of our relationship. He did all that, and then apparently he also couldn't stand sleeping in the bed we shared anymore. So he burned the wicker, bed frame, and mattress. The letter was honestly so ridiculous and full of woe is me nonsense. I swear I took a photo of it, but I couldn't find it. Story 3. Oh man, have I got a story. So, I dated a guy for exactly a year during my freshman year of college. He broke up with me. He claimed it was because I was too controlling, because we lived in my house, and I drove him everywhere. He didn't have a car, and his dad lost his job and couldn't pay for his housing, so he moved in with me, and he refused to get a license, so I had to drive him everywhere. Anyway, I found out it was because an old fling from when he lived in Australia was in town and he wanted to shoot his shot. I was relieved because he was physically and verbally abusive. He would have meltdowns and destroy things, and he would embarrass me in front of our friends as a form of retaliation. He constantly told me I was ugly and criticized my weight. He was absolutely awful, and I was young and didn't realize just how bad it was until I was free of him. We broke up, and I continued on with my life. 6 months later, I started dating someone else, and the second we became Facebook official, he reached out to the guy and claimed I gave him an STD and that he should watch out. I did not. This was incredibly awkward because I had just started dating this new guy, so having a crazy ex pop out of the woodwork was a lot for him to process as well. I ended up getting tested, and because I didn't have an STD, nor had I ever had one, it was all okay, and I moved past it. Then he randomly contacted me, demanding we suddenly share custody of the 2 cats he had adopted, and then left with me when we broke up. When I refused, he broke into my house and took them, forcing me to go to his house to try to retrieve them. When I arrived, I realized he had a sliding glass door that wasn't locked, so I simply opened the door and took my cats back. A few years passed, and every so often he would randomly send me a text that very obviously made it seem like we were secretly hooking up. He clearly was trying to get me in trouble with my current partner. Granted, at this time I had already blocked him on all social media and his phone number, but he kept getting new phone numbers. Then he randomly contacted me out of the blue and told me that he was walking home one night and decided to throw a smoothie at a homeless man who called his purple American Apparel hoodie gay, and the homeless man chased after him, tackling him on a curb and shattering his pelvis. He said he was wheelchair-bound and needed me to get him groceries and transport him. He offered me money, but I told him to F off. About 3 years later, he contacted me again, letting me know he had explicit photos of me he'd taken without my permission during intimate times, and that if I didn't get the entire 6th grade class he currently taught history for free admission into the aquarium I worked at, he would send them all to my workplace. I refused and resolved to just deal with any fallout if he went through with it. He never did. Every time he contacted me after that, I refused to respond and blocked him. Cue him sending me a random novel-length text about once every 2 years ever since then. So, for 13 years, he would randomly reach out on a new number, sending me a novel about how his life was going, and wording it like I'm a dear friend who would care for an update. Cue me blocking him. Wash, rinse, repeat. During that time, he randomly contacted my family and asked them if he could live in their home renting a room. What the hell? Oh, and at some point, he also invited me to Christina Ricci's wedding to his brother. Side note, it's interesting because when they broke up during COVID, she claimed he abused her. And some of the specifics were so similar to the crap he used to do to me when we were together that I honestly wonder if his crazy behavior is genetic. The last message I got from him was this past winter, and he detailed my location and said he was going to travel out to find me. I had moved 3,000 miles away from my hometown and from him. He included a lot of details about my life and sent it at what was 9 p.m., my time while I was alone at work, and it gave me a frigging panic attack. I genuinely felt like he was already there watching me. At one point during the past 13 years, I responded once and basically told him never to contact me again, that he was the worst human I had ever met, and the only person I'd be happy to hear had passed away. Then I blocked him. So, in no way, shape, or form was he under the impression that I wanted to talk to him. It's just crazy. His devotion is wild. We dated for a year. 1 year during my freshman year of college, and I'm now 36. He broke up with me, so it really makes no sense. It's not like I dumped him, and he never got over it. He left me. But holy crap, dude. What the hell? Like dedication. The delusion. I honestly wonder if he does this to all of his exes or if I'm somehow special. He truly scares me. Story 4. I was at his place when I broke things off with him. He had become increasingly controlling over time, and it had gotten to the point where he was trying to dictate which of my friends I could and couldn't hang out with. As soon as he realized I was serious about ending things, he bolted out of his house, drove all the way to my house, spilled some very personal secrets about me to my dad, then sobbed in my dad's arms for a while. Prior to this, he had only met my dad briefly on 2 occasions, so it was a bit weird for him to go running straight to him. When my dad eventually told me about it, all he said was, "I hope that fella's medicated." Story 5. I was in an abusive relationship for years. When I finally left, my ex acted like I was abusive to him. I'd finally had enough of his crap and had completely lost all love and respect for him because of his own actions over the years. He then did the following. He phoned repeatedly, threatening to hurt himself if I didn't come back to him. He repeatedly told me he had tried it, but had been found in time. He said he was going to jump from a very tall structure on the edge of town. I said, "Go on then, you've been promising for months." He said, "Wow, you really don't love me, huh?" He phoned me about a year after we broke up to tell me he had been stabbed. I said, "Yeah, good," and hung up. He phoned again several months later to tell me it was okay because he approved of the guy I was seeing now. As if I needed this MF's permission. He phoned about 2 years later to beg me to reconsider my stance on never getting back together. I said no. We were definitely never getting back together. He asked for 5 years apart and then wanted to revisit the idea. This delusional clown thought I just needed 5 years away from him to realize he was the one. Not once during any of these phone calls did he ask how his child was doing. Story 6. He went to the police and said I beat him up and stole $48,000 in cash from him. I was barely 20, 4'10", and weighed 80 pounds. The man never, and I mean never, had money like that. As I was getting arrested, multiple police officers told me they knew I didn't do it. The charges ended up getting dropped exactly 2 years after I was arrested. But it's still on my record, has made me miss out on many opportunities, and has made people look at me differently. Screw that guy. Story 7. He sent me a handmade collage of pictures of him with our friends that he kept after the breakup, including pictures of him with his new girlfriend. On the back was a picture of his dad as a boy. In the package was an oblong wood block, poorly hacked into the shape of a pickle and half-painted brown. He said in the letter that he hoped these things made me think of home, and remember in Bad Santa where the kid made Billy Bob Thornton a pickle as a gift? Also, he wanted me to know that his dad was very handsome when he was young. Yes, that was all in the letter. Then he called and asked what I thought of the pickle. Edit. I said it was weird that he sent me a pickle, and he said the girl he loved would have understood, and clearly that wasn't who I was anymore. Then he blocked me. 2 months later, he unblocked me to ask if I wanted to go skydiving. Story 8. He got in contact with me a few months after the breakup, and I obviously asked why. He said he missed me, but he didn't want to be anything, not friends or anything more. He just wanted to text me when he wanted to, because he would occasionally miss me and want to do things on his own terms, meaning he would decide when we texted and talked. He wanted me to keep the door open so he could contact me whenever he felt like it. I felt super used to it and mostly disgusted with him. Edit. I forgot to add that he didn't like the relationship I had with my current boyfriend. Me and my current boyfriend were just friends at the time, and he chose not to talk to me because it made him uncomfortable and because I was being far too delusional and it was never going to work out. Story 9. We were high school sweethearts and seemed strong into freshman year of college. I got sick at the end of the spring semester and ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks. That was too much for her, so we had to break up. 10 months after she broke up with me, and over a year since we had slept together, she showed up at my apartment very pregnant. She started talking about how the last time we were together the condom broke, so, rubs belly, this could be. I stopped her right there and said that was a year before spring break and that the math wasn't matching. Well, it could have been yours. Imagine if it was, yeah, no, I wish you well, but it won't be with me. Story 10. OMG. Mine spent weeks trying to convince me he was a werewolf like Jacob Black. I was 23, had never watched Twilight, and we were already broken up, so why? It was wild. and I thought he was having some type of mental breakdown. He just kept calling me and describing the entire transformation process. Like, Bish, you don't even want me back or anything? What's the point of all this? It was a wild ride. He was like 32, by the way. Story 11. My ex was abusive. I left one day while he was at work. I took my cat and my roommates, went to a hotel, and sent him a message in very clear terms that we were no longer together. Then I blocked him. About a month later, I had just met someone new. He spent the night, and in the morning, we went to the front desk together to grab detergent for my laundry. My ex was sitting in the lobby. He saw us and started screaming, grabbing me and threatening both of us. My boyfriend got him off me, and then my ex started recording. The front desk made him leave. I called the police. They said they couldn't do anything. The next day, a friend sent me a video posted on TikTok. It was me standing in the lobby with terror in my eyes and my boyfriend's arms around me while we told my ex to leave. He posted it with a long story about how I was his girlfriend and had been cheating on him. 1 million views, and all of them believed him. The hotel staff asked me for his TikTok handle so their legal department could try to get the video removed, since they received so many calls every day asking if I was there and asking for my full name. So, to 1 million people, I'm a cheater. That bothers me. Story 12. He kept texting me, showing up at my place, and trying to convince me that this was the best relationship he had ever had. Granted, from his end, yes, but from my end, it was one of the worst, and I told him so many times. He kept talking to anyone and everyone in my outer social circle that he could reach for whatever reason. I later found out he was shaping the narrative about why we broke up. He told people he was trying to marry me, that he proposed, and that I shot him down because I didn't have feelings for him and was cheating on him. None of that was true. There was no proposal and absolutely no cheating on my end. I broke up with him because he cheated while I was out of the country visiting my parents for the first time in 5 years and came back 2 weeks later. Even his housemate bros told him when I came back, and the girl he denied hooking up with actually found me herself to tell me what happened after she learned I was the girlfriend. Even after all that, he wrote letters and post-it notes and stuck them all over my door. For years, he kept texting me whenever he was drunk, saying he wanted to marry me. It got so bad that when I was visiting an out-of-town friend, that friend decided to troll my ex while he was drunk by taking my phone and having a text message throwdown with him just so I could watch my favorite movie in peace. They showed me the messages after the movie ended, and I had never laughed so hard. In case anyone actually reads this, my ex kept changing numbers to text me. It didn't matter if I blocked him. We also didn't have laws regarding digital harassment back then, so there wasn't really anything I could do about it. Story 13. After years of being in an abusive relationship and a year and a half of him trying to break up with me every day, I finally told him, if you say you want to break up one more time, we are going to break up. End of story. I was at a friend's house after working the night shift when he called to pick up a fight. He said we were done. I said fine and hung up the phone. Then he started blowing up my phone. He said he was going to off. I went and got my things, told his mom and dad that he said he was going to hurt himself, and left. A month later, he showed up at my aunt's house and tried breaking in. I wasn't home, and he called me to tell me he was trying to break in. I told him where I was because I had my boyfriend with me and one of my cousins. He tried to run over my boyfriend and my cousin. The cops were called, and he left. 3 months later, I deleted social media because he kept making new profiles to reach out. 6 months later, he took a baseball bat to my boyfriend's parents' mailbox while drunk driving. The neighbors caught the license plate number of the vehicle, which was registered to my ex's mom, and called the police. The next day, he went to the police station to turn himself in and told the police I was cheating on him. We had been broken up for 10 months at that point. My boyfriend's mom decided not to press charges, but the police gave him a warning anyway. After that, every 6 months on my birthday and my favorite holidays, he found a way to email me asking me to come back and be with him. There are many crazy things he has done since we broke up 6 years ago, but we would be here all night, and I still hear from him sporadically. Story 14. I broke up with him because I moved out of state to care for my mom, who was dying, and I was no longer able to cope with his needs in the relationship. He immediately got engaged to the woman I was worried he was cheating with and developed a heroin addiction because she was an addict. I honestly don't know if he actually cheated. I think she got him hooked, and I'm sure heroin feels a lot like love. They never got married. She is now engaged to his best friend. I think he lives with his mom. Story 15. One morning, I was woken up by a phone call on a landline. It was my ex-MM. She said, I take it since you're there, you're not in Virginia. My ex had told her mom that I had changed my mind after moving across the country and was flying back to marry her. She had borrowed her mom's car while wearing a wedding dress and left to pick me up from the airport. It had been days since she left, and her mom wanted her car back. She was eventually found on the other side of the next state with some other guy. A fun fact from before this happened, The other guy was the same person she got to call me and pretended he was her uncle in an attempt to trick me into taking her with me when I moved. He told me that he had moved to Montana too and that he was going to let her live with him. I had met her uncle before and immediately recognized that it wasn't his voice. Story 16. I have an ex who sort of just dropped off the face of the earth. A couple of months after we broke up, I saw a Facebook post from one of his roommates that said something like, "Hey man, we don't even care about the money. If you see this, just come home, please." Since he was the only guy in the house, I messaged the roommate and asked, "Hey, I know we broke up, but is everything okay with him?" Their response was, he left us a note saying he was an awful person, that he didn't have our rent money for that month, and that he was leaving. Apparently, he was the one collecting everyone's rent money, and somehow he lost it. I have some guesses, but no real answers. Then he just disappeared. He turned off his phone, left all his stuff behind, and was just gone. Story 17. Not me, but a guy I kind of used to know got dumped by his girlfriend and took it poorly. He knew where she worked, obviously. And he also knew they had a jukebox there that you could control from your phone even if you weren't in the building. As long as your phone has service, you can buy songs on the machine. He knew her schedule since they had just broken up, so he would legitimately spend like $30 a day playing a song she hated, over and over again on the jukebox while he knew she was at work. He even bragged about it to the group we were both associated with. Like the dude saw absolutely nothing wrong, creepy, or pathetic about what he was doing. Story 18. He just wouldn't leave. He was abusive in every way except physically and knew what was about to happen because he shushed me when he walked in and immediately went on a religious rant. My floundering religious beliefs were one of the ways he shamed and controlled me. He told me he was so scared that I was going to break up with him, but he had been praying so hard and that on the drive over, God told him we were going to make it through this rough patch. At that point, he was kneeling on the ground in front of the recliner I was sitting in and holding my hands. I said, "I think you must have had a bad connection with the big guy because I'm breaking up with you." He spent the next 2 hours arguing with me. I only tolerated it for that long because I was on major painkillers from endometriosis surgery 3 days earlier. I kept asking him to leave and he kept refusing until we fixed this, and he started getting really scary. I finally said, "Please don't make me yell for my dad and his gun." He told me I wouldn't. He was wrong. Luckily, he decided to leave before I had to ask for the gun to join us. After that, he would call and yell at me or call drunk to tell me about the girls he was seeing. I'm pretty sure he was actively banging during one of those calls. I should have blocked him, but abuse does weird things to your brain. Story 19. He showed up stalking on my new boyfriend's street a year and a half after our relationship ended, wearing a gray wig and a granny dress while pretending to limp down the street. I drove past him on the narrow road, turned, and looked at him from inside my car while he walked down the street. We locked eyes as I passed him. If my window had been down, I could have touched him. It was one of the most surreal moments of my life. Our kids were in the car, and I'm thankful they weren't paying attention and didn't see their dad. This man was 6'2". Nobody was going to look at him and believe his costume. He also showed up wearing a clipboard and construction vest, and another time in a Jon Snow wig and sports jersey. The jersey was apparently what he used for concealing curry. Weird and scary stuff. Story 20. I broke up with an ex because we just weren't compatible at all. She was an overly nice girl, but she had some serious daddy issues and was mostly oblivious to the world around her. We kept talking after I finished things, and I didn't think anything was weird at all. It just felt like friendly conversations, exactly like before we dated. One day I had gone out to lunch with some friends, and we all ate a bunch of KFC fried chicken. I also hadn't slept well the night before. I ended up falling asleep on my couch in the middle of the afternoon for a couple of hours. I woke up to my doorbell ringing and an absolute train wreck of missed texts, calls, and voicemails from her and from a few close friends of mine. Apparently, I didn't answer her first call or text, so she started contacting my friends, claiming that I had called her and said I was going to hurt myself and that she was extremely worried about me. The person ringing my doorbell was my best friend, who had driven about an hour because he was genuinely worried about my well-being. I had never made any statements about hurting myself, nor would I ever. After that, I stopped talking to her and told all my friends to ignore any crazy statements she made about me. A few years later, I received a letter in the mail from a bank because she had apparently taken out a loan and fraudulently used my name as a co-signer. Thankfully, she had paid the loan off, and the letter was only informing me that the payments had been completed. About 10 years after I'd last spoken to her, I went out to a bar with some friends on a Friday night, and guess who the bartender was? Her. My friends and I had a few drinks, and I woke up in my bed at home smelling like vomit with absolutely no recollection of most of the night. Apparently, after a couple of drinks, I blacked out, and my friends and I ended up at IHOP around 2 a.m. where I threw up all over the place. I started calling my friends, and they told me I was either completely blackout drunk or had been drugged. I have no way to prove it, but I am completely convinced she slipped something into one of my drinks. My friends also told me she tried to tell them, "As a bartender, I feel responsible for overserving him, and I will take him home." Thankfully, they strongly refused and took me home themselves, staying with me until I was safely inside and the front door was locked. Lord knows what could have happened if they had let her take me somewhere. Story 21. After I broke up with this guy, he and his mother went after me and messaged my friends, businesses I was associated with, and blasted me across numerous social media platforms. They spread lies about me and painted a picture that wasn't true. Luckily, my friends and the people who know me actually know me, so I just ghosted and blocked all of their numerous accounts. Then, a quiet year passed, and I suddenly got a court summons for a restraining order from him, even though he and his mother were the ones not letting me live in peace. The judge looked annoyed that we were even in the courtroom and gave a 6-month restraining order. The interesting part was that during that year, he had gotten 2 full-sleeve tattoos to cover up all of his self-harm scars. The scars had been fresh when I finally reached my limit in the relationship a year earlier. I realized I couldn't fix his mental health, and he didn't want help or want to seek help. So, yeah, that was crazy. Story 22, I have a fun one. I randomly got a call from him, and he told me that a girl he had recently hooked up with tested positive for chlamydia. He decided the only possible explanation was that I had given him chlamydia, and then he passed it on to her. It was laughable. Neither of us ended up testing positive for chlamydia. Then he went on to raise a baby with her for 6 months until one of his coworkers bought him a paternity test, and it turned out the baby wasn't his. Trust me, that was well-deserved karma. Now, he actually has a child with the girl he used to tell me was like a sister to him. Story 23. She had been blowing up my phone all day while I was at work. Over the previous couple of months, she had become extremely insecure. She would go through my phone while I was sleeping, log into my Instagram account, and unfollow every girl I followed, including family members, and constantly accuse me of looking at or even thinking about other girls. I worked at a restaurant, and she would occasionally stop by to get lemonade and see me for a few minutes. That day, a female coworker around my age happened to be working, and I could immediately see the look in her eyes change when she noticed. After hours of nonstop texts accusing me of cheating on her, I finally had enough. I took a 15-minute break to call her and tell her I couldn't do it anymore. The paranoia, insecurity, and crying were just too much for me. After that call, she never texted me again. When I got home later that night, I noticed my front door was unlocked. I walked inside and found a giant pile of human crap right in the middle of my couch. As I got closer, I saw that both walls on either side had also been smeared with it. It looked like a murder scene. Out of all my breakups, that one was probably the crappiest. Story 24. I dated a famous girl. We would get recognized pretty often whenever we went out together. It didn't take long for me to realize she wasn't what I wanted, so I tried to respectfully end things. For a few weeks afterwards, she kept showing up at my house and literally hiding in the bushes waiting for me. Eventually, she stopped stalking me. Then, over the next 2 years, some of her fans would randomly message me saying things like, "You know what you did, and you have it coming." I had completely ended the relationship, moved on, and moved out of state as quickly as I could because of her. I still have no idea what she was telling people about me or what she may have said on podcasts or elsewhere. The craziest part? We only dated for about 2.5 months. Story 25. After we broke up, she started trying to hang out with all my friends and spent the entire time talking crap about me. I'm part of the Hash House Harriers, so a lot of our social gatherings were posted publicly. She had never attended a hash before, and I had been hashing with these people for 4 years. Understandably, it did not work out well for her. I had blocked her on everything, and about a year later, she somehow found a way to send me an email seeking reconciliation from a smart fridge. Story 26. I wish I could post photos. The day I finally kicked him out, he went on a text rant about what a horrible person I am, how I think I'm better than everyone, and how I'm a piece of crap hypocrite. Then, about 2 hours later, he sent me a bunch of jokey memes like nothing had ever happened. Later, he showed up at my house trying to take my dogs with him. I told him no, and he texted me afterward trying to sound overly rational and make me look crazy, saying, "I know you hate me, and that has colored our time together, but frigging hell, you're living in a world of your own making." He also told me to fix the hole in my fence so the dogs wouldn't get out when there wasn't a hole in the fence. Then, he continuously called all the women in my family over and over again. None of the men, though. Story 27. He kept sending me tickets to events at the bar he worked at through the mail. He tried to make it look like the bar was sending them, like one of those giveaways for shows that didn't sell out, but it was extremely obvious it was him. They did a passable job printing a flyer and making it look official, but the venue didn't even have my mailing address. I never bought tickets online, only cash at the door if I went at all, since they usually just let me in for free. The owner and I know each other, and he laughed when I asked him to confirm that wasn't actually happening. The tickets started showing up literally a week after I broke up with him. Story 28. He sent me a 3-minute video of himself crying. After that, he sent multiple snaps telling me to rethink the breakup. I blocked him on Snapchat and his phone number. Then he emailed me. I blocked him there too. Then he came to my work trying to talk to me. I told security, and I had to hide in the back until he left. After that, he messaged me on LinkedIn. I left him on read. Then, 3 years later, he sent me another message basically thanking me because I was the one who convinced him to apply to grad school, saying he never would have done it if I hadn't pushed him. Story 29. My ex-wife accused me of being an alcoholic. I'm not. Cheated on me and then said it was my fault she cheated. I'm college-educated, successful, with very little debt. Even after paying child support and alimony, I bought a new house and rebuilt the wealth I lost through the divorce. She's now dating an abusive ex-con, drug addict, alcoholic, who has cheated on her multiple times and lives on a property owned by his family. She makes $20 an hour and has had to help him pay his bills. He keeps telling her he's going to marry her, but he's still technically married. I know all this because through a strange twist of fate, I became friends with his ex/current wife without either of us knowing the connection. I don't know if it's crazy, but it's definitely stupid. Story 30. She went on a smear campaign against me, saying I took all her money, wouldn't allow her out with friends, physically ripped a ring off her finger and pushed her, and that I was emotionally abusive and took away her home. She also said I abandoned her son, who I was about to adopt, and that I constantly put her down and was never involved in the family. It was the complete opposite of what actually happened. Luckily, most of the people she told have known me for decades and knew she was full of it. She just didn't want to look bad or admit any fault. Moral of the story: avoid narcissists at all costs. All of this happened while we were breaking up in what I thought was a fairly civil way. Story 31. I don't even know which situation to choose. Her flew to the other side of the country with no plan and was living on a boat for 3 months. Her getting into a fight with the boat owner, which resulted in her being forcefully admitted to a psychiatric ward. Or when she was on day leave with a social worker sorting out her bank access, then ran away to a small island. And when the police found her, she thought she had done nothing wrong. Story 32. Teamed up with my mother and kidnapped my child. I'm dead serious. This happened in 2015. I was separated from my abusive husband. My mother didn't believe he was being abusive. We lived far away, so she never saw the bruises. She just thought I was being a bad wife and exaggerating things when I finally told her why I was leaving him. I came home from work one day and my child and spouse were gone. I called the police, but they didn't do anything because the child was with their father and we didn't have a parenting plan in place yet. He took our child 3,000 miles away to my mother's house and she kept them there for 2 months. I wasn't even allowed to speak to my child on the phone during that time. I had no idea what was happening or why it was happening to me. It was easily the worst thing that has ever happened in my entire life. My child had their 7th birthday there. I wasn't even allowed to speak to them on their birthday. I got my child back after 2 months, and everyone involved just collectively pretended it didn't happen. My husband met his karma a few years later. He died in a car accident. And my mother, to this day, refuses to speak to me at all. She still believes she was right to help him take my child. Story 33. I'll turn the tables and admit the weirdest thing I did after a breakup. While my boyfriend stepped out for a morning errand, I heard his iPad going off with notifications. Half asleep, I went to silence it and saw texts from a girl responding to his meetup offer. I was so pissed that I had to check myself. Instead of getting angrier, I got petty. I took the microwave plate out and the batteries from his TV/Xbox remote, along with a few other small things, and left. Story 34. He was active duty military. He dumped me on April Fool's Day, his time, from somewhere in the Red Sea, saying he didn't think our relationship was fair to me. I had never even complained about him being gone all the time. For months after, he kept calling from rerouted numbers, and I constantly had to remind him that he was the one who dumped me. He would say, "Stop saying I dumped you." Eventually, I had to change my number. Story 35. Dated a woman who looked a lot like me. Then she brought her to shows she thought I might be at. Keep in mind, he lived in another state at this point, and still did all this nonsense. Then he dated my little sister's childhood best friend. She had even visited us with my sister before. He was extremely weird about trying to stay inserted in my life after the divorce. He's now in Guam because a woman he groomed as a teen threatened to blow up his high-paying job. Story 36. 2 years after, at a party, this was witnessed by my friend, he was playing beer pong. As he threw the ball, he would say in a crying voice, "My girlfriend left me for a girl." He started dating his now wife a few months after we broke up. For the record, I definitely did not leave him for a girl. I went on a lot of dates with men and women before meeting her. I had actually tried to leave him for about a year, and it finally worked out because it was summer. My parents and sorority advisors always told me to stay with him, and I felt like a hostage. I even quit the sorority. He was out of control, always blaming me for anything he could make up and melting down over insecure false beliefs. He would trick me into getting me away from my personal plans. At one point, he insisted on driving my mom's nice car while under the influence. When I told him to watch the road and stop swerving, he pulled over, fell out of the car, and started punching the sidewalk while crying and yelling, twisting things and claiming I had called him names. Another time, I taught a niche hobby class. He attended once, immediately threw a fit, and my boss made him leave. When I asked him why he did that, he said it was because he thought everyone in the class was judging him for not having a partner, since everyone else came in pairs. It was awful. It's been decades, but I still get reminded of him and how much happier I've been since he left my life. Story 37. Our breakup wasn't mutual. When I, 30 female, finally moved on, I realized the separation was for the best. We weren't compatible, even after 6 years together. He constantly made me feel small and commented negatively on my appearance. I'm considered conventionally pretty in my culture, but photos from that time show me with hollow eyes and unkempt hair. 5 years after the breakup, we ran into each other in public and briefly caught up. While I was talking about enjoying my new job, he started crying and apologizing for being a bad boyfriend. That was weird to me because it had been years since we last spoke, and he had a girlfriend waiting for him at home. It took everything in me not to ask if he planned to tell her he was sobbing in front of his ex. Story 38. He sent me a spreadsheet of several hundred lines of expenses he expected me to reimburse. He went through his credit card bills from the 3 years we dated and calculated what percentage I owed him from every single purchase, down to drive-through receipts. We had been living together for years, splitting expenses roughly evenly, never expecting repayment for small things like groceries or takeout. But after he blindsided me with the breakup, he decided he wanted retroactive repayment for everything. Since I kept the dog, which we had gotten together but was mainly for me, he also demanded I pay him back for every bag of dog food and every daycare visit, even though daycare was for both of us to work and had been split at the time. When I refused, he tried to extort me and threatened to come take my dog. Because I had to move out quickly and had limited funds, I ended up in a place with poor security and didn't sleep properly for months. I don't know where he is now, but if I found out he got hit by a bus, I wouldn't be too upset. Story 39. We owned a home together, but after a messy breakup, he stayed with his parents. He came by a few days later to pick up some clothes while I wasn't home. When I returned, I found he had gone through the pantry and opened every food packet, so everything had gone stale. Popcorn, chips, crackers, all of it. He admitted weeks later that he did it because he was angry and wanted to imagine me looking forward to eating them, only to realize they were ruined. Story 40. Probably not that weird, but weird for her. Or maybe in hindsight, it was just who she was. After talking and dating for about a year, I guess a situationship is the right word, she messaged me one morning, telling me about her day. She talked about kids, meeting up, sleeping together, typical stuff. That was the last I ever heard from her. She never responded to any of my messages after that. I asked for clarity, asked if she needed space. I didn't spam her, just one message a week until I eventually stopped. A month later, I went to her house to drop off a birthday gift I had gotten for her. She was outside, saw me, and completely shut down. She said she didn't deserve anything, that she was a coward, and that she just can't do this right now. Apparently, stress from her mom and work had made her push everyone away, family, friends, everything. She said she wanted to be alone and not worry about anyone. It was strange because this was someone who had actually been good at communicating and was slowly opening up. We had even talked about taking things seriously not long before that, and she reassured me about her feelings. Then she just disappeared. Didn't even have the courage to tell me directly. Now I'm trying not to ruminate on my own mistakes. She told me I didn't do anything wrong, except maybe I got more anxious when she pulled away, but of course I did. I was worried. It wasn't just a few months of talking. I'm kind of just venting at this point. It still hurts. I wish her the best with her mental health, but I'm heartbroken. She did identify as avoidant, so maybe I should have seen it coming. Story 41. So the crazy was there before the breakup. It just became obvious afterward when the blinders came off. She cheated a few times during the relationship. 3 that I can confirm. I stayed and tried to work through it over 5 years because I thought that's what couples did. By the end, we were both constantly angry. Not really intimate, but still stuck together because we lived with friends and I was financially supporting her through university. Eventually, she cornered me in the kitchen and said it wasn't working anymore, and we should break up. I stayed calm and agreed it wasn't working. She completely lost, screaming that I clearly never loved her if I didn't cry when she broke up with me. Then, she hit me. I just went back to my friends who were visiting and acted like nothing had happened while I processed it. Long story short, the people we lived with took her side. I'd been angry for a long time and had things I needed to work through, so I wasn't exactly the easiest person to be around either. It's been 10 years single this year, and I still wonder if I'll ever be okay with people touching me. If someone cheats or hits you, get out. Don't stay because they didn't mean it. Or I probably deserved it. You deserve respect and care. Full stop. Story 42. I was 19, and he was 27 when I broke up with him. He relentlessly messaged me about getting back together. I told him I had no interest. I just wanted him to get professional help for his own sake. His response was, "How can I win you back if you won't play the game?" Immediate you. He somehow figured out when I was working and showed up at my job 2 or 3 times before I had him banned from the store. After that, there was no contact for a few weeks until he suddenly found some of my things I had forgotten, which he had actually taken and hidden. A couple days after I got them back, he commented on one of my social media photos. "Damn, you're telling me to come get that stuff and we didn't fuck?" So I drove over and screamed at him and called him a predator until he cried. Weeks later, I found out he was telling people, including his mom, that I had realized I was actually a lesbian and left him for a girl I fell in love with. I guess it was easier than admitting he got dumped by a teenager he'd been grooming for years. On the bright side, I met my partner a couple months later, and we've been together for 5 lovely years now. Story 43. The relationship had run its course. We both agreed and parted amicably. He immediately started a new relationship. However, he was bothered by the fact that I didn't seem upset enough that we had supposedly moved on. So, while his new partner sat inside with his kids, whom he dumped on her, he would sit for hours outside my window waiting for some kind of reaction. I ignored him and went on with my life. One day he saw me come home from work carrying a bag of takeout from a restaurant we used to go to together. Giuseppe's. He completely lost it. He jumped out of his truck and started pounding on my door, demanding to know who I was going to eat with. Because according to him, I'd never eaten at Giuseppe's alone and it was our restaurant. Then he sat in his truck for hours, waiting for some imaginary man to show up and eat with me. I sat inside alone and happily ate my food in peace while he waited for a fictional rival. This went on for over a year, and I eventually moved. He ended up marrying the woman he had been dumping his kids on. Story 44. He moved in with me about a year before we broke up. He was never officially added to the lease. After I finished things, I let him stay for 3 months while I moved into a new apartment. I had been planning my exit for a while. In those 3 months, the house went from pristine to an absolute mess. He moved his PC to the dining table and started leaving piles of used tissues there. He used the bed without sheets, turning the mattress brown. The bathrooms were worse. I cleaned for 2 weeks and asked my dad for help. When I confronted him over the phone, he said something like, "Your dad can get cancer again, you sanctimonious bish." Story 45. I broke up with him and he had a spare key to my apartment. I asked him to remove his things while I was out of town because he was acting unhinged. He was upset he didn't get to say goodbye to my dog, but I wanted to avoid him entirely. He took the most random things, including dismounting my TV to steal the wall mount. Whatever, I named my dog Butters because I eat a lot of butter. When I came back, I went to make toast and realized he had taken all 8 sticks of Kerrygold I had in the fridge. Story 46. I briefly dated a guy in my industry, maybe a little over 2 months. When things started getting serious, he ghosted me. I was upset at the time, but moved on, dated someone else, made good career moves, and had the time of my life. Months later, he reappeared on social media, back with his toxic, his words, ex. Good for him. Now we run into each other at work and events, and he visibly shakes and sweats when he sees me. He still likes everything I post on LinkedIn. Poor guy. Story 47. I broke up with a controlling ex after an out-of-state family trip. There was very limited reception in my grandma's small town, so he could only reach me at night when I returned to my hotel 70 miles away. Every night he would scream at me about how inconsiderate I was and how lucky I was that he allowed me to be with my family. This wasn't new behavior, but being away from him finally made me see it clearly. I broke up with him over the phone at my parents' house the moment he called. I just couldn't deal with the abuse anymore. After the breakup, he sent me an email with a screenshot from the end of Fight Club where Marla and the main character are holding hands while buildings explode. The caption said, "You're the worst thing that's ever happened to me." I blocked his email. Then he started sending texts threatening to hurt my dog and burn down my apartment. I changed my locks and alerted building security. I told his mother with screenshots. She said I broke his heart and he was just upset. I contacted the police, but they said unless there was physical harm or damage, there wasn't much they could do. and advised me to keep documenting everything. He kept making fake accounts to harass me, and even used his mom's, sister's, and grandmother's phones to send messages. I blocked everything and made all my social media private. He eventually showed up at my workplace. A coworker recognized him in the parking lot and alerted security, and he was removed. After that, he stopped for a while. 6 years later, he found my Instagram and DM'd me to say he was getting married and that he wished she was me. I thought about warning her, but I couldn't find any way to contact her. Story 48. After the breakup, they continued acting like we were still together, but now doing all the things I had wanted during the relationship. They brought me lunch and gifts daily. We worked in the same place, so they would drop things off where I ate lunch constantly. They started telling their friends and family about me, sending good morning and good night texts, compliments I never got before, ever. It was weird because they were the ones who broke up with me. I eventually had to re-end things when I couldn't take it anymore. Story 49. I once had a girl I'd been dating for a few months invite me over for dinner, then break up with me seemingly out of nowhere before dinner. Then she expected us to just eat together. I was bummed, not angry, just not hungry. I didn't want to stay, so I left. No harsh words, no begging, just confusion and sadness. We worked in the same office, so I told a coworker the next morning. We saw her that day, and she said she was going out for lunch. My coworker looked at her and said, "What, you don't have any leftovers?" That was when I realized everything would be fine. Having to work with someone you think broke your heart is definitely an experience you grow from. And yeah, eventually, I learned the difference between a broken heart and a bruised ego. For me, it was almost always the latter. Story 50. I was with this guy for 7 years. We moved in together after a year. He sponsored me for a permanent residency as his common law spouse. We bought a house together, spent holidays with each other's families, adopted a cat, got engaged, and postponed the wedding because of COVID. We eventually broke up after a few couples therapy sessions. I spoke to a lawyer and sent him a proposal for my share of the house. He was also a lawyer, and he responded by saying we were never actually together, that we weren't a real couple, and that I wasn't entitled to anything. I spent 9 months fighting him for my share of the house. During that time, he told my lawyer that I never did yard work and said he would have neighbors sign statements as witnesses. My lawyer found that hilarious. Eventually, we threatened court, he consulted a divorce lawyer, and immediately agreed to my original proposal, including spousal support. I got the money a week later and never heard from him again. And I vowed to myself, I will never mow a lawn as long as I live. Story 51. We had been living together for a few years and he couldn't keep a job. He would constantly get one, then quit after a month or two. So I ended up paying most of the bills. I broke up with him and kicked him out. He moved in with his brother and sister-in-law who lived about a 5-minute walk away. The agreement was that he had to keep a job and save money to move out on his own. He got a decent job and, as far as we all knew, was going to work every day. One day I got sick at work and came home early. Things felt off in my house. A few things were out of place and my dog was acting strange. I looked around and found him just standing in my empty spare room, hiding from me. Apparently, when he moved out, he had taken a spare garage door opener and had been coming into my house every day while I was at work, just hanging out, and telling his family he was at work the whole time. Story 52. Not weird, just heartbreaking. My wife left me because I was too depressed. A few weeks later, she asked me if I would consider ending my own life in a way that looked like an accident so she could collect insurance money. I ended up hospitalized and injured. Because I was so hopeless, I just said, sure, why not? I spent time in a mental health facility after that and am slowly rebuilding my life. In a way, it helped me realize I didn't actually lose anything by leaving that relationship. Someone who could even consider doing that clearly didn't love me. Story 53. With no plan, I left my bizarre, controlling, paranoid ex while walking the dog and fled our house and relationship. I only took my dog, family heirlooms I could carry, my wallet, a water bottle, a few peanuts, and the clothes on my back. When I was out of sight, I ran. I ran until I couldn't anymore. My dog could run forever, but we eventually stopped, ate peanuts, drank water, and stayed hidden in a strange rooftop parking area overnight. I saw her car drive by below. The next day I went to the bank, then a library bulletin board, found some rooms for rent and moved. After 3 weeks, I started to feel somewhat safe, until one evening I came home and found my toothbrush nailed to my apartment door along with an art postcard of an old autopsy and the words, "You'll never see me coming." Inside, I found my dog wearing a black bandana I did not own. I have no idea how my ex got in. I moved every 6 months for 2 years. Story 54. End of a 7-year relationship. 2 weeks after breaking up, he insisted on introducing me to a coworker he thought I'd really get along with because he thought I needed more friends. I met a coworker for coffee. He was funny, and we ended up becoming gym buddies and close friends over time. Eventually, he asked me an odd question about the place I worked at with my ex. I had never worked anywhere with him. A very confusing conversation followed. My new friend was living with my ex and was deeply in love with him. He had been told I was an old friend from work. They had already been dating 5 months before my ex and I even broke up. It was one of the most hurtful things that's ever happened to me. They stayed together for 3 years before he did something similar again to the next guy. Story 55. After we broke up, here's how I found out she had her own set of keys cut for the house I lived in. One Christmas, she gave me an electric guitar. Nothing expensive, just an entry-level Fender, because I'd mentioned wanting to try electric guitar. Very thoughtful at the time. We broke up about 7 to 8 months later. She was very unstable. This is just one of many stories. Not long after the breakup, I came home from work and went to play my PlayStation. It was an original PlayStation, so this was the late 90s. It wouldn't turn on, but I didn't think much of it. I went to grab my guitar, and it was gone. Bad feeling immediately set in. I didn't want to contact her or reopen anything, but I had no choice. I lived in a shared house, so I couldn't just change the locks without involving everyone else. A few days later, I came home again, and the guitar was back, engraved. It now read, "Given with much love, Christmas 1999 Trish." On the pretext of picking up clothes from her place, I found out she had had keys cut early in the relationship. She gave them back, but she could have kept a spare set. The clothes I got back all had small holes cut in the back. And the PlayStation? She had cut the laser comms cable with scissors. After that, I stopped trying to make sense of it. Story 56. I found out a close friend had been in an extremely abusive relationship for years and had hidden it well. When she finally decided to leave, she called a few of us. We arrived right after he left for work and stripped the apartment clean. It was in his name, but almost everything inside was hers. We took furniture, electronics, and even small things like fridge racks, curtains, light switch covers, doorknobs, and window screens, anything removable that he would be responsible for replacing. She packed all his clothes and video games into the bathtub and covered them in bleach. We got her moved to a relative's place that same day. That evening, he came to my door, convinced she was cheating with me and threatening to hurt both of us. I was furious, ran out, and it turned into a physical fight in the hallway until a neighbor, who was a sheriff's deputy, intervened and arrested us both. It turned out he was on meth, had a gun, and had been making serious threats. He also had a criminal history none of us knew about. After that, we encouraged my friend to press charges and testify. Between that and everything else, he ended up sentenced to 17 years. Life has been calm since then. Story 57. After I left, he ghosted his friends, moved to the town I had always wanted to move to, married someone else before I had even recovered emotionally, and quickly had a child. When I left him, he was a depressed party guy with drug and money issues who refused to change or let go of his social circle. I was emotionally exhausted, financially drained, and close to a mental health crisis from trying to hold everything together. Story 58. 2 weeks after I broke up with her, a mutual contact pointed out that she had a brand new picture of us as her profile photo on MySpace. I told him that was impossible since we had broken up 2 weeks earlier, so I went to look. She had found someone who looked almost exactly like me. The photo was taken in her backyard on a sunny day. Despite it having been cloudy almost the entire time since I ended things, it looked like a replacement version of me. Story 59, I wouldn't even really consider her an ex. We dated for a couple of weeks and I ended it because of incompatible hygiene habits. She tried to stay friends under the idea of keep your friends close, enemies closer. She said this on a phone call to other people, thinking I couldn't hear. It was entertaining, but I obviously didn't keep her around. I blocked her. Story 60. She got engaged within 2 weeks and married within a year. They separated after 3 years and divorced after 4. We dated again after the separation, and it did not end well. Since then, she has been posting constantly, almost daily stories and weekly posts. The frequency is concerning. I can't tell if it's my post-breakup perspective, but many of them feel directed at me. Captions about being in a better place, being softer, and being art with so much to offer. I'm trying not to let it get to me and focus on moving on. Story 61. Mine stalked me heavily and even tried to hurt my cat. I still lived with him at the time. I was 19 and thought I could help him. I would wake up to him in bed, touching me or just staring at me. He went through my phone constantly. He had somehow installed software so he could mirror my computer activity on his phone without me knowing. He did disturb things to women, recorded it, and then showed me the videos while saying he was emotionally processing my reactions. It felt like he was getting off on my disgust. My cat eventually went missing for nearly 2 weeks. I found him later, covered in ticks and in bad shape, but alive. Story 62. Back in 2003, I was an E3 in the military. I had bought pots and pans for a shared kitchenette since she didn't have her own. When I came back from being in the field, all my cookware was gone. I asked my roommate where it went, and he said my ex had come and taken it. I told him we had been broken up for over a month. Turns out she had a new boyfriend and just figured she knew where to get pots and pans. That's only one story from that relationship. Story 63. I got a spoof call from an ex using my dad's contact info. I was on the toilet and answered thinking it was my dad. I immediately said, "I'm pooping. Can I call you back?" It was actually my ex telling me how much he missed me and needed to talk. I hung up. He was extremely needy, calling or texting constantly. I don't think more than 30 minutes ever went by without contact. We had only dated for about a month, and I was never even attracted to him. He went by Josh the Voice, even on caller ID. He once yelled at me because he scraped his car while backing out of my driveway and blamed me for it. Somehow, that was also my fault. Story 64. I was walking into my place when I saw my ex had pulled over. He was there with his little sister, helping her move into a dorm at the local university. He asked if I needed a ride. Our breakup had been very messy and involved abuse on his part, so I immediately said no and asked what was wrong with him. He said I was being dramatic. My place was right there, so I just walked away. I still can't understand why he thought I would ever get in a car with him. Story 65. I lent him my PSP for 2 years. He returned it completely infected with viruses and couldn't find his games or saves. Despite being a graduate in IT, I managed to recover everything myself and lent it to him again. When we broke up, I asked for it back since it was a graduation gift. He told me I was his ex now and had no right to demand anything. With help from mutual friends, including his own mother, I eventually got it back. He returned it in a Tupperware container labeled U-Beach. Story 66. My ex-wife, very stoic during our divorce, used to call me and just stay silent on the other end of the line. The phone would ring, I would answer, and there would just be silence. At first, I didn't even think it was her. She showed no emotion at all about the end of our marriage. I also later found out she had been tracking every house I lived in after I moved out. I only discovered that years later. Story 67. He tried to let himself into my apartment using a key he had already returned, but had secretly copied. He became furious when he found out I had changed the locks and accused me of being with another man. I wasn't. On another occasion, he called asking to find out why I hadn't been home for days. I was house-sitting for my best friend. We had been broken up for months, and I didn't owe him explanations. My father was involved with a motorcycle club at the time and went to set him straight. I moved and changed my number afterward. He was unstable. Story 68. She went on to marry a series of neglectful, borderline abusive religious men. One, a new Christian fellowship pastor, another a seminary dropout. She later became deeply invested in eschatology, especially interpretations of Islamic end-times theology. Eventually, she ran off to become a second wife to an Arab man, possibly Syrian, during the Arab Spring. There's a possibility she died during the conflict or is living under strict conditions as a second wife. She was a striking redhead with a very fit build, the kind of person who, in the wrong worldview, might be treated like property. Story 69. My ex-wife and I agreed to divorce because the relationship wasn't working. After that decision, I emotionally checked out and started noticing more clearly how bad things had been. She made several cruel and malicious comments while I was still living in the house before I moved out. I started counseling, where I was told I had been in an emotionally and psychologically abusive relationship. That helped me understand what I had been experiencing. I met someone not long after moving out, and am still in a healthy relationship with them today. After the separation, my ex tried to get back together on 3 separate occasions, even while I was already with someone else. Even when the divorce paperwork was being finalized, she still checked if I was sure. I eventually had to stop engaging with anything except divorce and housing matters because she kept trying to reopen emotional conversations and then turning hostile. The last thing to happen is that my partner and I are moving away due to me being reassigned somewhere in my job. It's a great opportunity, a new area that is going to be far more beneficial to us, and it is about 250 miles away from where we are now. My ex-wife messaged me for the first time in about 8 months since the house sale was completed, essentially saying, "You're moving to X? Proud of you." I do not have her on social media and I do not talk to any of her friends. She somehow found out I was moving somewhere new and, out of the blue, messaged me to let me know that she knows. I've now blocked her from every method of communication. Story 70. I was in a lot of pain already, so he had the bright idea of pursuing the person he said he was going to replace me with and then emailing me about their first date in great detail, including how she wouldn't let him get a word in edgeways for the entirety of the date. After that singular date, he described it as his first adult relationship and that he was possibly getting attached to her, which scared him. He then cried about the fact I took it as closure and that he'd moved on. rather than a demonstration of his raw honesty and love for me. Story 71. We lived together, and when I broke up with him, I kicked him out because the apartment was leased in my name. I went to stay the weekend with my sister to give him some time to pack up his things without me there, and to get some space from him because he was begging and pleading and making me feel really uncomfortable. When I got home, he and all his things were gone. He had left me a note on the counter that went on and on about how I would regret my choice, etc. As time went on, I started deep cleaning and rearranging the apartment to make it feel like my own space. That's when I started finding things. He had left notes from him and Polaroid pictures of himself all over the apartment, hidden inside books, behind framed pictures, under the mattress, everywhere. There were even old birthday cards and love notes I had written to him during the relationship with sticky notes attached that said, "Don't forget you felt this way." Altogether, there were 33 different notes and photos that I found. It still gives me the creeps to this day. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.